Thank you very much for being part of our community of practice today. We are the Grad Partnership and would like to tell you a little bit about our mission and who exactly is that. So the Grad Partnership is a group of 12 organizations that have partnered to work with communities to build high quality student success systems so that schools are empowered to graduate all students ready for the future. And we do this through providing technical assistance to schools, districts, and states, and also building the capacity of intermediaries throughout the country who can provide more local support. We have also developed a bunch of tools and resources, and you'll hear about some of those throughout the session today. So our objectives for this series are to help the community plan a team data conversation, use student experience data to strengthen your understanding of problems, design solutions and plan on taking action, and then build routines for reflecting on progress and refining your actions. And today we're going to start with really thinking about what's needed to plan an effective data conversation. So I'd like to introduce myself and my partner. We are Sarah Howard and Lauren Musial.
Hey everyone, happy Thursday.
I'm the deputy director. Lauren's a senior transformation coach at the University of Chicago Network for College Success, one of the proud partner organizations in the Grad Partnership.
We are spanning the country today. Fantastic. Keep those rolling in. But let's move into our community agreements. So we're coming together today, again, from a whole bunch of different spaces. And so we want to just ensure that we have some common commitments during our learning and our conversations today. So we are centered on our we, not just me. You'll have plenty of opportunities to do some reflecting and chatting, and we want to ensure that airtime is shared. We're only here for an hour together. So there is some non-closure, of course, but we want to ensure that you're walking away with some really great ideas, but the details of those stories and the learnings can stay within our community. The actual lessons learned go out with you. We want to make sure that we're making some room for laughter and joy along the way as well. So we'll use these agreements together today and in our breakouts as well. So to get us situated with our work for today, we're going to drop a link for our activity guide. So this is going to be your one-stop shop for our objectives, our community agreements, our activities for today, and any resources that we have. So I'll give you a minute to click the link in the Zoom chat, and that's going to prompt you to make a copy. So it'll go straight into your drive, and that will be your own personal resource for our time together today. All right. As Sarah mentioned, we have some intentional objectives for our session today, but of course throughout the year. And so you'll see also in our activity guide an overview of our learning arc for this year. So this is our first of 4 sessions, and we are talking throughout the year of how to really strategically use data and data conversations to drive student success. So we hope that after today, you continue to sign up with us for the rest of the year to learn with us and also share how you're implementing some of the things you're learning in these sessions as well. Awesome.
Thanks, Lauren. So what in the world are we talking about when we say student success systems? We're really talking about organizing schools to surface and then address school-wide patterns, and then increase school connectedness and sense of belonging so that we can meet individual students where they are. And this concept of student success systems is built on four main components, which I'll say more about in a moment. But we wanted to point out that in the first couple years of grad partnership, we've had some really promising results. Um, we have seen as districts partner with us to implement student success systems, they have seen reductions in chronic absenteeism as well as course failures. So we're really proud of, I mean, I will say we knew from the experience in Chicago that this was a likely outcome, but it is really encouraging to see it spread across the nation. So back to what are these components of a student success system? We think of it as having four components. The first one is student-centered mindsets that shift from thinking about, what do I have to do as a teacher, or making teachers, like really orienting our action choices around what's easiest for educators to what's most needed for young people, and to see their success as our responsibility. The second one is that in order to understand what we need to do, we need to understand what's happening in real time. So we've got to have data that is not just annual, but that is happening frequently enough for us to assess the impact of what we try to do to support young people. Strategic improvement actions is thinking about what do young people most need in the moment based on our understanding of the data, both quantitative data and voice data. And then finally, all of this has to be happening within the context of strong relationships between adults and young people, between schools and families. Really have to build a sense of we are in this together. So today we're going to be focusing on two of these pillars, two of these components: student-centered mindsets and real-time data.
Fantastic. So let's get into it. What makes a good data conversation? Like Sarah mentioned, we need holistic, real-time, actionable data. So when we say data, this is what we're looking at: quantitative, qualitative. That includes grade data, attendance, behavior, surveys, empathy interviews. All of that data is going to give us a real-time view of students' academic progress and their personal experiences, so that the adults in our school teams can really identify what is working and where are those opportunities to further support and grow our young people. So this type of holistic, real-time, actionable data is fueling the conversations to really improve our student outcomes and goals. And it's going to be a combination of our continuous improvement actions and some accountability. But when we think about how data is typically used in our schools, you frequently, I could say, it's used for accountability alone. And some of the emotions that came in the chat earlier today reflect that a little bit. If we could click. So when data is used for accountability, that's where we might get some of those feelings of uh, shame or blame. And this is strictly, this where it feels like a got you moment, right? And we can see this sometimes with school ratings or teacher evaluations. It doesn't always feel exciting or make us feel curious to see more. Now, when we're talking about data for improvement, we are thinking about our professional learning communities and some of our own data collection to see where we can grow and what could be improved. Data for improvement is not evaluative, and so some of the emotions are a little bit more positive. There's some collective feelings, some curiosity, and it is informing our practice. But for the conversations that we want and need to have for our young people, we're talking about data for transformation, and this includes data for improvement as well as data for accountability. We can learn together and keep learning together, but we have to hold each other accountable for the outcomes that we're trying to transform. And so we need a bit of data for accountability and data for improvement. And we practice having those types of transformative conversations with specific structures so that we can reflect and use that holistic transformative data to really serve our students who need it most. During those data conversations, we are aiming to develop our student-centered mindsets. And these mindsets are fostered in all of our collective spaces, but we again want to use structures that are intentional to really help us listen um, for that collective focus. So that this is an opportunity during our data conversation specifically to listen with empathy instead of judgment, to really center strengths-based and asset-based thinking, to verbally express our belief in students and their agency, and to have respect for our colleagues, as well as our young people and our communities for the whole experience that they're having. So we're going to practice today in our data conversations, really using and listening with these student-centered mindsets so that we can bring that back to our spaces and support our teams to develop those student-centered mindsets through data conversations. One practice that we're going to engage with is first focusing on who we are as leaders. And so Brene Brown gives us this quote: "Who we are is how we lead." You are all leaders in your spaces, whether you're formally leading a team or not. And as leaders in those conversations, it's vital that we understand our own emotional reactions to data and to feedback in these conversations in our teams, because our emotions are indicators for us, but we don't want them to become a barrier. So once we understand what might prompt an emotion or a reaction, it'll help us lower our emotional response and manage it so that we can be present and vulnerable to have these necessary data conversations for our young people. So this activity we're going to engage with comes from Brene Brown's Dare to Lead book. And in your activity guide, it's labeled Armoring Up. So I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to read the Armoring Up excerpt and spend some time reflecting on the prompts within your own activity guide. So I want you to think about when you're in a team meeting and data is going to be a part of the conversation, and that initial moment when you might have a reaction. So not the outcome down the line, but your initial response. So I'm going to stop talking and give you 3 minutes to read the excerpt in your activity guide and reflect on those prompts. Hopefully you enjoyed your reflection conversation with your partner. I would love to hear from at least one person. What came up for you in your reflection about your own armor in your own leadership? What did you learn?
So we were talking a little bit about how when we're meeting sometimes how it can go south pretty quickly and there's a lot of negativity. And I know for me that tends to, I can be very vocal, but it tends to make me want to close my mouth because I get so frustrated that I want to remain professional.
Mm-hmm. Tove, am I saying that right?
That's correct. Tove, yes.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. Um, yeah, so this awareness that we're trying to build about our armors is really personal for us. Our armors depend on who we are, our backgrounds, our life experiences. So we want to ensure that we do know what is going to potentially cause our armor to come up for us in these conversations so that we can process and still be able to connect with others. It's really going to help us lower that protectiveness that is coming up so that we can then center our young people and their voices. So hopefully in your conversations, you were able to share a little bit more. But we, during our data conversations, are trying to create this emotional transparency in these brave spaces for authentic dialogue. And as leaders in these spaces, if you can go ahead and click through, Marie. It is our responsibility to understand our armor, and knowing ourselves and our emotions is very much within our locus of control. And so, in order for us to build these shared mindsets, we all are modeling this type of transparency and vulnerability through these collective conversations in our school teams so that we can truly learn together and collaborate for our young people. So one of the structures that helps to create these student-centered mindsets and have a good data conversation is an Atlas protocol. An Atlas is one of the most common data protocols. Maybe a quick show of hands. Who's done an Atlas protocol before? Oh, okay, fantastic. Lovely. Atlas is a really great protocol because it has a really clear structure. Go ahead and click. The purpose of the protocol is to create this sense of curiosity and true openness and reflection, and to slowly move up this ladder of inference um, so that we don't just jump to action, that we're really sitting with the data, getting curious, checking our assumptions before saying, okay, what do we need to do to improve? So it helps us create this balance between that improvement and accountability while still asking some really good questions and supporting those shared mindsets. So the structure of an Atlas protocol looks like this. You will spend some time silently reviewing a sample data set that is in your activity guide. And then going up that inference ladder, first we're going to describe the data, just facts. What do we see? Looking for any patterns or trends. Then we move into wonderings. And then we get to some implications. What does this mean for our work? So in your breakouts, you'll have about 4 or 5 people in the breakout room. One person, we're asking you to volunteer to be a facilitator to practice hosting this protocol, and one person to be the timekeeper so that we can practice moving through the rounds. Everyone's going to practice listening with empathy, using some strengths-based language, and really just trying to practice building those student shared mindsets. So this slide is going to be projected for you while we're in our breakouts, but you have the protocol and the steps in your activity guide. This is what the sample data set will look like. There's a tab with some raw student data lists, and then the second tab has some graphs. So in the first 5 minutes, you can explore both of those tabs before you dive into the actual protocol. So again, today is all about practice. So if this is a brand new protocol for you that you haven't facilitated, would be a great spot to volunteer to give it a try. I think it's also helpful to pay attention to when your own armor might come up, or think about how this would play out in your own team, and what might you say in your breakout there today would be a great space to try to practice that. All right. Welcome back.
Welcome back, friends. We appreciate you being willing to step into trying something out, even if in a small, truncated way. And would love to hear one or two people tell us how you experienced, since most of you said you hadn't tried that protocol before. What was it like to process data in this way? And did anything about Lauren's point about developing shared mindsets through this kind of conversation come up?
Hi, Xavier. I think that having the Atlas protocol keeps a structure to the conversation because it is so easy to go off on tangents. I think that's why it's really important to have the facilitator to kind of keep people on track. So yeah, I think that's one of the ways that it keeps people from going too hard into the armored upside when we have to say, okay, just name what you see, right? We're not talking about how we feel. We're not making this like we're not into the assumptions part yet. Just name what you can see, and I think that having that structure helps the process move forward instead of just getting stuck.
Really appreciate that insight. And I was in a group that started thinking like, well, which courses are the F's in, which is a natural curiosity. Having a data set like this where the courses aren't identified as the first time through creates some safety where you know, your skin's not all the way in it yet. And then maybe we raise the curiosity and that changes our data set the next time we look at it. Go ahead, Lauren.
Carmen? Carmen's got her hand raised. You want to?
Yes,
Yeah,
please.
really quickly, because I have to hop onto another meeting. I just wanted to say that I think it slowed the process in a really good, intentional way. And the prompts allowed for additional sort of meaning making, but also raising additional questions. So I thought that that was good because everyone had different come into this process with, different perspectives and different experiences with data. So I think it just kind of slowed it enough to allow for to people to digest it a little bit more.
Love that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I heard in the groups I was in, people asking each other questions like, what do we think this is saying? What is this graph saying? Making meaning together. And that builds that sense of shared effort. We are seeing the time, and it's really important to us that we get to a couple of closing moves. So I would just ask you to think about what's one takeaway that you are noticing today, some next step you might consider, or an idea you're taking with you. We'd love for you to drop it in the chat, but that is not our priority right now. So it's important that you take a second to think about what's my one big idea. A couple of resources that we want to point out, we shared in the activity guide a quote from the paper called Practice Driven Data, where we're really encouraging you, you can go ahead and go forward, where we're encouraging you to think about how do you create those conditions for risk taking, where team members are really willing to learn with each other, maybe taking what we did with the Armoring Up activity to your team and having them just share about how data makes them feel before they try to get into looking at some data together. We want to thank you so much for spending this hour with us today. We hope you'll come back and back again in December and February and April. We have a brief survey that is linked in the activity guide, and also Marie's going to pop it up on the screen. And we use your feedback to inform our planning for the next session. So it's a very short survey. We'd really appreciate you taking a few minutes. It's also in the chat if that is easier. As I mentioned, our next session is December 11th at the same time, same bat channel, same bat time for those of you who remember that reference. And we thank you so much